December 26, 1963. The Beatles release what would be their first American hit, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And Beatlemania begins. However, the year has been a difficult one. First-class postage is raised from 4 cents to 5 cents. The U.S. mail adopts the zip code system. The first touch-tone phones become available to customers. General Hospital premieres on ABC. Let's Make a Deal premieres on NBC. The BBC premieres Doctor Who. As the nation mourns the death of its 35th president, it celebrates the birth of a legend. This legendary woman was named Susan Viviano, and she was born and raised in the small town of Belleville, Illinois. She was as intelligent as she was beautiful, and with her natural athleticism, there were no limits to her future possibilities in life. Susan was the 4th child born to June and William Viviano, and it was clear from the beginning that she was their finest work. Growing up, Susan was the most popular girl throughout school and her neighborhood. I mean, seriously, just look at her. Absolutely stunning. In high school, Susan was a fashion trendsetter. Just notice how splendidly she represents the height of 70s apparel in this photo. But it wouldn't be long before her world took a new turn. Enter the sailor. Young, dashing, and possibly more than a bit horny, this puddle pirate was home on shore leave when he was introduced to Susan by a mutual friend. Despite her initial misgivings regarding so-called blind dates, Susan was nevertheless enchanted by the sailor's swagger and worldly ways, agreeing to a date after only a brief introduction. The date went well, and Susan agreed to another date, and another, and yet another. Until, over the course of his entire shore leave, it became very clear the two had fallen madly in love. But the sailor's life of the sea meant they spent more time apart than together, but when they were, they made the most of it. Meanwhile, when apart, Susan would keep the sailor's interest with ample photographs of her incredible beauty and long phone calls filled with breathless promises of love. And it worked. The sailor could not imagine his life without her, and so they married in January of 1983. The couple enjoyed their honeymoon in Hot Springs, Arkansas. A sparing little cottage in the Ozark Mountains was all they could afford, but it was enough. They were happy and very much looking forward to their new life together. But with 8 months until his enlistment was up, Susan was forced to move from duty station to duty station with the sailor in a string of temporary assignments unprecedented in his 4 years of service. In August of 1983, Susan gave her sailor a clear choice. It was either her or the sea. It was no contest, and the couple packed everything they owned in the back of an old pickup truck and returned to their hometown in Illinois. But the return home was difficult for the couple. For some reason, they seemed compelled to be away from everything they had known and had a real need to start something new for themselves. The couple immediately moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, where, like most couples just starting out, they struggled to make a home of their modest one-bedroom apartment. The couple spent 2 glorious years in Little Rock. With no children as yet, they enjoyed the freedom to explore the beauty of the state they lived in and partied like it was 1999. But it soon became clear that each of them yearned for something more in terms of their careers. And when the opportunity came that the sailor could get a free college education from his home state, they once again packed their bags and returned home to Illinois. Supporting her husband being a full-time student was difficult, and the years seemed to drag on. But Susan did discover one important thing. Spending weekends selling her handmade jewelry convinced her that someday she must have her own business. But after college, A new major chapter in her life would soon begin. After much deserved time off after her husband completed college, Susan soon discovered she would be a mother. She gave birth to a son in July of 1990 and spent the next 2 years only working part-time so that she could give raising her child her full attention. Even so, while working in the early hours before her son would wake and making a home for her family, she managed to obtain a degree in horticulture during this time, a field of study she took to with much enthusiasm. It would not be long, however, before Susan's life would undergo another major change. Within 2 years of purchasing her first home, a unique opportunity arose, and with much excitement, Susan and her family moved to the Lake of the Ozarks in 1993, marking a chapter in her life that continues to this very day. With a fresh start in a new area and her son now old enough for preschool, Susan's thoughts once again turned to the idea of owning her own business. With her love for horticulture, it only made sense that she would choose a retail garden center as her first startup business. And with the help of her father, she created the Cat Rock Garden Center. With the lake area growing rapidly and the quality of the plants she grew from seedlings, the garden center became very successful, and soon Susan's reputation as the lake's premier horticulturist was well known. But it was bloody hard work, and it wasn't terribly long before the stress of being a business owner, coupled with the sheer physicality of the work she was doing, began to show. Susan was in the best shape of her life, and she knew it. But the daily grind over the years began to take its toll, not just physically but mentally. Her love for the garden center could not overcome the demands of the landscaping part of the business, and after the death of her father William, her greatest advocate, the end seemed all but inevitable. The closing of the garden center was the end of one era and the start of another. It was now time for Susan to return to college, where she spent the next 4 years earning her degree in computer programming. In this endeavor, like so many others, she also excelled and graduated summa cum laude from Lincoln University. She has spent the last 20 years with the same company that hired her fresh out of college and continues working to this day. This has been but a brief look at the amazing life of Susan Kiefer in pictures. It is simply impossible to review the life story of such a wonderful person in such a short time. But the most important thing to remember is that she loves and is beloved by all that know her, and we are all very lucky to have her in our lives. But this is far, far from the end of her story or her adventures. As she celebrates the end of one age, she embraces the start of a new one. A new age filled with adventure and the freedom to do as she wishes. A life well lived. A life well earned. We should all join in celebrating that life and wish her all the best for her future. I will leave you now with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that I believe sums up the life of Susan Kiefer. Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, and with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. Happy birthday, Susan.